Executive and Finance Committee meeting to order for July 15, 2024. Cody, could you do the invocation, please?
Skionethlana, Ogidol to Galani there, Alashkush Stelis Kajis to go. Father, thank you for this time and fellowship together, Lord. Thank you for helping us all come together in one place to help the betterment of the Cherokee people, Father. And Lord, we pray for our communities, bless our Cherokee people, and help us to strengthen us going forward, Father, to continue to serve one another and serve our people the best way that we can, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
We're done. Shelley, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Joshua Sam.
Here.
Kevin Easley. Here. Sasha Black Fox Qualls. Danny Callison. Here. Julia Coates. Here. Joe Deere. Mike Dobbins. Here. Lisa Hall. Here. Johnny Kidwell. Here. Daryl Legg. Here. Dora Petzkowski. Here. Cody Poindexter. Mike Shambaugh. Melvina Shotpouch. E.O. Smith. Here. Condessa Teehee. Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
We're done, Shelley. All right, let's see. Has everyone had a chance to look over the approval of the minutes for June 27, 2024? I got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposition? All right, motion passes. All right, let's go ahead and jump into reports. We have Cherokee Nation Businesses with Mr. Chuck Garrett.
Good afternoon, councilors. Always a pleasure to be with you all. Last month at your E&F meeting, you heard from Molly Jarvis, and she gave a report on our May 2024 financial performance. And just due to the cycle of the meetings and the timing of today's meeting, our June 2024 report will be coming out later in the week. So I don't have any news for you or new report on that front, but we do have some important updates that we would like to provide you all today. And let me just give you a little bit of background to set it up. In 2020, we were hired by the Department of Health and Human Services. And I say we, it was Cherokee Federal, which is our federal contracting business line. And as you know, been a fast-growing business for ours over the past several years. And we were hired to do some very important work on some very specific services in Pomona, California, to provide some unaccompanied children that had fled various parts of Mexico and Central America. And we were hired to provide some important and very specific services to those children. And I'm gonna just tell you this, I was out there, I saw it, I heard the stories, I witnessed it with my own eyes, and I can't tell you how proud I am of the work our team did during that period of time. These were traumatized children. These children had had this incredibly challenging and dangerous journey over thousands of miles in some cases. And our team was hired to provide that stabilizing force in these children's lives. And so that's exactly what happened. And we'll go into much more detail about specific services that we're providing. But unfortunately, we find ourselves in the midst of a national political debate, number one issue of which is immigration. And so during the back and forth of this political debate, there are many good intentioned folks that are getting caught in the middle. And we're exactly that. This whole issue has been politicized and has resulted in some really outrageous and absolutely false accusations. There's zero evidence and zero basis for these claims. And so we wanted to come to you today to educate, inform, and hopefully, you all will be able to understand if you are questioned, if you have questions from your constituents or others. We want you to have the information, but I can assure you that in everything we do, Cherokee Federal, Cherokee Nation Entertainment, all the cultural stuff, anything we do, we recognize that we represent you, We represent the 450,000 Cherokee citizens across the world, and we take that seriously, very seriously. That is the no compromise line right there. So it's been very difficult to stand on the sidelines and watch these baseless claims leveled at our team. So today I brought with me Stephen Bilby, who's our president of Cherokee Federal, Dina Geib, who's the vice president and general counsel of Cherokee Federal, Tim Roberts, who's the senior vice president of humanitarian services and was on the ground virtually from day one throughout the entire engagement in Pomona. And I think following their presentation and the questions and answers that we can provide and discuss, I think you will have the information you need to feel extremely confident in the work we did and actually extremely proud of the work we did. So with that, I would like to invite Mr. Bilby to present, and I think there's some materials that each of you have. So, Stephen?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Thanks for letting us come and be here. I think I would start with saying that a lie is a lie no matter where it's told. And even if it's in a Senate roundtable, if it's a lie, it's still a lie. And we're going to walk you through today exactly what we did on the ground there in Pomona and the mighty work that we did. I'm a little bit heartbroken today because typically when I come down here, I get to tell you all the good stuff that Cherokee Federal is doing. Our business is still growing. We continue to be one of the top government contractors in the world, and basically started that from nothing 15 years ago, and we're tremendously proud of that. And so, unfortunately, I'm missing an opportunity for me to tell you, we've got about 5,000 employees. I'm missing an opportunity for me to get to tell you all the great things that they are doing. But trust me when I say they are still doing great things. The business is growing. It remains strong and healthy. We are super proud of it, and I know that you are super proud of it. And we talk all the time, as Chuck mentioned, we talk all the time about, is our work star-worthy? We wear that star everywhere we go, and many times we are the face of the Cherokee Nation around the world. And so we want our work to be star-worthy. We want how we interact with people to be star-worthy, and we did nothing less than that in Pomona. We are incredibly proud of what we did. If you turn in your packet there to page 2, I want to set the stage. I know we have some new faces that don't go all the way back to when we were doing this work in 2021, but I want to go back and kind of set the stage. We were literally in the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, and if you remember at this time, CDC and the president closed the border with Title 42. And that was kind of the beginning of some of this crisis that was created. Over the course of time, there was 122,000 unaccompanied children that were brought to the border and dropped off alone. The year before, that number was 15,000, and so you can kind of see the exponential rise in the individual cases. The shelter capacity for HHS at that time was around 10,000 beds, and so you can see the demand far outweighed the supply, and HHS, our country, literally found itself in a major crisis on how we were going to address the unaccompanied children that had been brought to the border. You see the small picture there on the right-hand side. CBP takes the unaccompanied child at the border and puts them into a temporary facility. They're supposed to move those children out of that facility, I think it's within 72 hours. And based on the capacity issue that we pointed out there on the left, you can see through that picture that literally inside of those facilities they were being overrun with children. And none of us, if we had seen that picture in real life, none of us would have stood for allowing children to be in those circumstances. And so HHS began to mobilize and began to create emergency influx care facilities. We were asked to go to Pomona, California in April of 2021. At that time, we were going for a site visit. I think there were 6 or 8 of us that went to go look at the LA County Fairplex to assess what it would take to stand that facility up as an emergency intake facility. At that meeting, we were informed that we would be getting the contract and that we had roughly 6 weeks to stand that facility up. Now, when I say stand that facility up, it's about a 50-acre campus. Part of the Pomona Fairplex that we had was about 50 acres. And we did everything that a small city would need to be stood up to house, at any one given time, 2,500 kids. Also be the place for roughly 4,000 people to show up and work to take care of these kids. I'll go into some of the services, but again, you can only imagine the sheltering, the food services, the health services, the education, the religious elements that we had to provide on this facility, and we had 6 weeks to stand that up. I remind you again, the COVID epidemic was at its height, and we were being told while we were standing this facility up that roughly 40% of the kids that we would receive would have COVID-19. And at that point in time, COVID-19 was not as understood as it is today. The vaccine was not available, and so we were expecting something of that proportion. Now, I'll tell you, they didn't tell us about tuberculosis, they didn't tell us about scabies, they didn't tell us about all the other things on top of the trauma that all of these children had experienced. And so you can only imagine putting yourself in that situation. We felt like it was the right thing to do for Cherokee. We felt like it was the right thing to do for these children. We felt like we had experience in each of these areas that we could bring it together and deliver a service to these kids. And I go back and I put myself in the place with the room with our team when we kicked this off. And we told the team that, number one, we expect you to lead with your heart. These are children. Take care of them and lead with your heart. We also set the expectation that we were to deliver something that we would have only hoped for 190 or so years ago when the Trail of Tears ended. What would we have wanted that to be like? And that was the frame that we put on ourselves as to the service that we were supposed to deliver for these children. They had taken their humanitarian journey, and we wanted to deliver something different for them. And we felt, based on our history, and based on our work experience, we felt we were the best to do that. And I'll skip to the end in this part, and we did that. In no uncertain terms, we did that, and we'll show you that in just a little bit. On page 3 there, you see some of the pictures of the facility and some of the bedding and shoes. And literally, I mean, we had a logistics department that was just, dealing every day with clothing and shoes and what these kids need and how we fueled this site to make sure that their every need was met. Incredibly complex. If you turn to page 4, and I won't go through all of these metrics, but you kind of see the expansiveness of this facility. 1,750 youth care workers. So 24/7, we had to have our employees with eyes on these kids. And depending on their age, there was a defined ratio of how many kids to one set of eyes and how we manage that across the facility. So again, terribly complex, but we did it overwhelmingly satisfactory in the eyes of the customer, as well as, I believe, in the eyes of the children. If you turn to page 5, this is just kind of a quick summary of our overall responsibilities. What I want to do is give you a picture of what we were responsible for on this site. On the top row, you see there the health, the housing, the food, the education, recreation, spiritual. Again, a small city, everything that these kids would need. And then underneath that, you see our case management. And that's what we're going to focus most of our time on today, because that's the thing that's being challenged by what we did. So flipping to page 6, in December roughly of 2022, there were far-flung media outlets that were starting to say things about the work that we did at the site. In fact, I think we had a couple conversations in this room about that. Of course, at that time, we said, here's what we did. We did not do any of that. Those are baseless allegations and completely false. That continues to be true today. They are still baseless and they are still false. Last Tuesday, I believe, an article came out in the Wall Street Journal and is basically telling some of the highlights of this. We were not named in that Wall Street Journal article. And then last Tuesday afternoon, Senator Grassley led a roundtable with a couple of the whistleblowers and then a couple of experts, one from Florida and then one that is an expert in human trafficking. And during that time, very scripted, questions and answers were even very scripted. There were, as we counted, 33 false allegations on us, where they said 33 different times things that were completely untrue and completely baseless. Again, it continued to be centered around two whistleblowers, Tara Lee Rodas and Deb White, who did work on the site. Now, the crisis was so bad that the government at the time asked for volunteers from different agencies outside of HHS to go to these influx care facilities to help because of the situation that was developing. Tara Lee Rodas and Deb White were two of those individuals that volunteered from other agencies to go and help volunteer and do that work. And again, as I mentioned, we have kind of been positioning and setting up for, as the election came, we knew immigration would be a hot topic. We also thought that as we provided information to senators and others that was the facts, we also thought that would clear a lot of things up for them. But as sometimes things go, they chose to ignore those facts, and those facts did not come out in this roundtable. And then I think if you flip to just quickly to page 8, really kind of the bottom line of it, and you've heard me say it over and over and over again, but zero evidence to these outrageous claims. It's simply not true. Cherokee Nation businesses, Cherokee Federal would never traffic children and would never enable trafficking children. Completely false. I want to quickly kind of turn, if you go to page 9 and then ultimately to page 10, I think this might be the most important slide for you all to understand. What it really does is it outlines what our responsibilities actually were. If you listen to that Senate roundtable, what you're going to hear is a lot of conversation about policy on the front end that closed the border, opened the border, led to this crisis. You're going to hear a lot about that policy. We don't control the policy. That's for lawmakers and experts. We are not that. We are a government contractor. You're also going to hear a lot about what happened after the discharge or reunification of these children, where they went, what was the follow-up on the back end of that at the in-home visits, if you will. And we did not control that. And so I wanted to quickly focus you in on what we did control. So again, as I mentioned, CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, finds the child and they take them into temporary facility that there's only a short duration that they are able to hold these children in those facilities of theirs. They then moved them to an influx care facility once they were all stood up. And there were multiple of these. We weren't the only one. There were multiple. And then they moved them to these temporary facilities. And so, again, at a high level, we dive into this a little bit in the next few slides, but I wanted to give you a view of what that work is. And so, at the bottom there, you see our care, the health, the food, the whole thing there. But at the top, you see the intake process, the casework that we do. We gather sponsor data, we assess the sponsor, and then we finalize the case. At that point, we turn that case over to a third-party vetting service. And then We work back and forth with them. They take action on adjudicating some of the issues. Then we turn that over together. Once that's final, we turn that over to HHS. HHS, ORR, Office of Refugee Resettlement, they ultimately make the decision on is that sponsor qualified to take this child. It is outside of our purview on that decision. We simply build the case, gather the documentations, provide that, work with the third-party vetter, which is a company called GDIT, and then if all that is satisfied, we then move that into HHS for their release decision. We do handle some of the back and forth around how the discharge will go. Some of the children were released there at Pomona. Some of them were also transported bus, plane to a different location to be reunited with their sponsor. And then ultimately, you see at the far right there, the home service, the post-release services, again, not within our responsibilities. As you might imagine, everything in this realm is policy-based. There is extensive policies that defined exactly what we did every single day for these children from a case management perspective. There are 3 roles, and if you turn to slide 11 and 12, there are 3 roles. There are case managers, that's what we were. There are case coordinators, that's the GDIT role, the third-party vetting role. And then there ORR, Federal Field Specialist, that is the government's role, and that is the role that has the ability to approve and release the child and determine that the sponsor is fit. So on slide 12 there, we go into a little bit more detail about kind of the core responsibilities. And I don't want to overwhelm you with details here, but I want to make sure that we thoroughly understand this. Our role was to research, gather documents, follow the exact process that ORR has laid out for us, put that case together. Now, at times, we would see indicators that concerned us, whether those were mental health issues, whether that was we suspected trafficking, whether we suspected various things. And at that point in time, while we're doing that work, we would note that. And then that would go into another group, the third-party vetting group and HHS, to adjudicate that work to make sure that our suspicions were right or wrong. Now, they had access to more data than we had. There were background checks and things done on sponsors. We did not have access to see all of the data in that background check. We didn't necessarily need to because we were not making the final decision on placement with that sponsor. And so you kind of see the different areas there, and we've given you some notes. And then if you'll turn to slide 13, I'm not gonna read this because this is a kind of an overwhelming eye chart. What I want to really focus on with you here is there are multiple parties involved in the placement of these children. And we worked back and forth. And so if you see at the top line, up until you get to the far right where it says decide, and the one just before that where it says assess, the government has set this framework in place of the job that we are supposed to do. And once we get to that assess phase, we start working with that third-party vetting company to say, here's the case, what are you seeing? And we go back and forth with them. And then ultimately, once again, we turn that over to the government to make that ultimate decision. And then we handle the discharge after that. Now, again, you heard a lot in the Senate roundtable about the after. So you place these kids who went and checked to make sure the home was a good home. It's much like the foster care system. Like how do you circle back to make sure the kid's doing well? The home is what they said it was when they were trying to sponsor the child. How do you make sure that? Again, that was a service way outside of us. We did not do that service. We did not even have visibility into that service. As we were seeing things in our case build, we would recommend and suggest that the follow-up services be required at whatever level. Ultimately, the third-party vetting group as well as the government made that ultimate decision. I want to ask Tim Roberts to come up, and I want to make sure that I've covered everything. Tim, and we had so many people like this, and it's why I'm so passionate about where we sit today. Our people gave everything. And many of them, including Tim, put their life on complete hold. And they went across the country, and they lived in Pomona taking care of these children. And if you walked into this site, then you would see all of these kids, how well they were taken care of. You would see their faces and understand the overwhelming responsibility that we had to take care of them and what that meant to us. And I want Tim to kind of elaborate a little bit more on this decision process, but I also want you to hear from him because he lived this every single day and just did a terrific job leading as we aligned it with his heart and what we would want to see if we could have done it, what we would have wanted to see at the end of the Trail of Tears. And so I want him to mention and just talk some about this decision flow process and anything I might have left out. Tim.
Sure. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I think some of the important things to address about the case management process is the thoroughness and the segregation of duties in defining who a sponsor is and what dictates them or what determines them as a safe release point for these children. Each parent or relative or known person to the child had to be vetted through verified documents such as birth certificates, passports. There's an entire list of documents that could be provided. Many times if those documents weren't legible or we weren't super sure about their validity, we were allowed to call the consulate in the host country to say, hey, can you verify this person is who they say they are? From then, these case managers, which by the way all had bachelor's degrees in social services or human services, 99% of whom spoke Spanish, so they're culturally really capable of dealing with this population, would then establish a history, just like any good social worker would, of a relationship with the child and the sponsor. So directly interviewing the sponsor, directly interviewing the child, making sure their two stories match. If the sponsor wasn't a direct blood relative, they would have group sessions with the sponsor and the child with behavioral health professionals who would then assess if these people really knew the child before they were released. They would demand having evidence such as social media posts, doctor's notes, approvals for school pickups, anything that led to sort of establish a proven history that these people were in the child's lives before they made the journey to the United States. On top of that, there were a number of levels of background checks. Depending on the type of case, it may require a full FBI background check. Certainly any sort of state or local criminal histories were checked. Child abuse histories were checked. And if anything were a hit, those would be reported, and then the government themselves would have to verify that sponsor was still eligible. Once we completed a case, it was a given that the government had cleared any concerns we'd found. If any caseworker or even a direct care worker in the dorms with the kids had said, hey, I heard this kid talking about gang affiliation, or they wrote something on their clothes, that would be reported in these kiosks that Stephen will show you, immediately turned over to another body to investigate, and then that case would be flagged for post-release services and home studies. So we left the site, bottom line, knowing full well that we had, through multiple different parties and layers of different protection, validated each child and each sponsor in the relationship that they had. And then any of the things that we saw, in these hearings, honestly, we can't even relate to. They're so far from the truth. So happy to answer any questions as to that process as to why we feel confident, but what we did there was safe for the children that we cared for.
Keep flipping through, Tim, and talk about the training and then ultimately the kiosks as
Sure.
well.
So one statement was made in the hearing that there's no training available for case managers, and that's just not true. While it is the responsibility of the contractor like Cherokee to provide the training, the leadership that we hired for our site was extremely experienced in operating these types of shelters. So there was established trainings in these. If you go to slide 16, you can see screenshots of some of those trainings. Those were done for every case manager. And there was a number, I think on the following slide, number of trainings that took place over several days and many hours. There's also a lot of on-the-job training done for these case managers. And then to the extent that the system was strained. When you go from having 15,000 kids one year, and maybe 30, 40, 50,000 in a high year prior to that, to 80,000 kids in the first quarter of the year, the truth is there's not enough case managers to cover that. You're training a lot of new people You're creating a lot of new oversight and coming up with new approaches. One of the things that was mentioned in the hearing are strike teams. And those were characterized as these teams that were put together to just sort of shuffle kids out of the site and do their paperwork very quickly. In fact, they were quite the opposite. What we would do is bring in our top-level person from the government, our federal field specialist who has decades of experience with unaccompanied children cases. GDIT would often participate, who also brought in career professionals and on occasionally PhDs who understand the journey these kids are on. Our case manager director, who's a licensed clinical social worker. And they would staff cases in sort of a speed dating type format. And it's probably, I don't know if that's the best way to characterize it, but the idea is the professionals set up in a room like this one. If you need help with your case, come in and the whole team will help you answer all of your questions. And we would go through those day in, day out for hours on end so that every single case got the eyes and professional background of the best people in the market. So at any given time, our case managers knew that escalation was available. They also knew they could get up and walk their case over to the professionals we had on the side of our case management room. And by the time a document by the time a case was finished, it was a given that every single document was gathered, every box was checked, any sort of questionable item, let me say a child that's come a long way has a lot of paperwork on them at times. Sometimes they'll put it in a baggie, and sure enough, the ink will bleed and the documents are no longer legible. We would have to go through and figure out what to do with those, either get new copies from their parents, order new birth certificates from the consulate, and what have you. And by the time the case got done, it was a given that the case manager had completed a full package, that a third-party professional had reviewed it, the both had agreed on the recommendation being made, and then the government would review it again and give it another level of review and verify that everything was accurate. And within the systems that we had, both the case management system that we put in place, our software, but mainly the government source of record, all those records, the paper trail, the notes, the documents are uploaded. And so at any given case, over the 2 years that this person, Terry Lee Rodas, has made these claims, nobody else besides this new lady, Deb White, has joined. Hundreds of volunteers throughout the system, thousands, have seen this process. Only one person has made these claims, and she's come up with zero evidence, and 2 people now. So we're confident that we can back up what we've said. We're confident that ORR has looked into some of these accusations in the past, and the reason it hasn't elevated to any sort of formal legal review is because there's simply no evidence to back it up.
Keep going. Yeah, I think there's one more. Talk about the SIR.
Yeah. If you jump to slide 20, I'm happy to go through any of these. One thing that was very prevalent on the site is the knowledge of what a significant incident report is. It's a given that, and this is every employee, every person on the site is trained that if you see something, say something, and the way you say something is to file a significant incident report. Contractually, we were required to have a staffed office that sits apart, that doesn't report up to the site lead. This person didn't report to me or anybody else on site. And those people would receive these significant incident reports from the staff. To make it easier and also more anonymous to create these reports, we developed kiosk technology that ORR had never had. Adapted what was formerly a sort of a bill pay type of kiosk, where in any building without leaving your post, you could walk over and say, I saw something of concern. I saw a youth care worker acting inappropriately towards a child. I wasn't comfortable with that. I heard this child report gang activity. I think this child's being trafficked. If you saw something, you're procedurally required through policy to file an SIR. And we've received thousands. I mean, it's just the nature of running these sites. Anytime sees a concern, they want it to be taken care of. So we received and vetted thousands and thousands of these kiosks. What the kiosk also allowed us to do is immediately get that in the hands of the government. So if someone would go to this kiosk, they would file their concern, and an email was immediately sent. Both we and the government had access to those kiosks, so there was no ability for anybody to delete those concerns. And those went into the permanent record of all of these cases.
All right, so we're going to I know we're giving you a ton of depth, and we're doing that intentionally. I want you guys to understand the knowledge and what we did. But we'll quickly kind of move forward to slide 21, oversight and transparency. I think this is really important. If you flip through those following slides after the opening slide that says oversight and transparency, this site did not lack visitors and oversight. There was so many different layers of compliance, oversight, review, congressional or folks from Congress, House, and Senate that would come to the site. State and local officials would come to this site. The Office of the Inspector General would regularly do routine audits on this site with zero findings. And so we wanted to be the model site. And with that, we knew we had to be open. So if someone, an elected official at whatever level, local, state, national level, at whatever level, we would bring them into the site and show them everything that they needed to see, as well as answer any questions that they might have. And so you see there, this continued to be our policy and our focus. With that, I'm going to stop. I'm sure that you have many questions. Myself, Tim, Chuck, Dina, anyone is happy to answer any questions that you might have in regards to our work at Pomona. But I'll say this, again, doesn't matter where you tell a lie or who's telling a lie, it's still a lie. And that's our position. These are baseless, false allegations, untrue, been going on for almost 2 years now with zero findings. Inspector generals, whoever else, zero findings. And we continue to be focused on telling our story. Questions for me?
All right, do we have any questions? Condesa?
Well, I appreciate all the information that you brought forth. And I personally, and I know other counselors also, are very troubled, largely because the root of these allegations, the first time I heard them, was in this room, from a member of our body, from an individual who had a platform to politicize issues that did not need to be politicized by this body. When we're talking about refugee children, this individual brought forth, and I'm talking about Counselor Wes Nofire, who then utilized that platform to leverage himself a new position in our state government. So his baseless, spurious accusations are not limited only to this particular issue. He also made allegations about misspending of ARPA dollars from the Cherokee Nation tribe itself, which resulted in an audit that cost Cherokee citizens thousands of dollars to essentially prove we had done nothing wrong. So I see this as an extension of disinformation, misinformation, and bad faith allegations from an individual who is seeking to grandstand politically and raise their own profile at the expense of refugee children, the Cherokee people, and our own businesses that are seeking to serve Cherokee people. So my question for you is, what can we do, whether we're talking about legally, to try and counter those absolutely irresponsible, baseless claims, to try and put these terrible allegations to rest?
I think there's a lot there, and I'll try to unpack it in parts. I think first we just have to continue to tell the truth. The truth is key here, and we have to continue to do that. Now, how we do that, we want to work with the administration. We want to work with you all to make sure that our customer is the federal government, and so we want to make sure that what we're doing from a business perspective aligns with what we want to be doing from a nation perspective. And so that is a job for all of us, our government relations team, our communications team, the business leaders, to really focus in on what do we want our counter strategy to be on this. I and the team am willing to do anything. I am willing to sit down with Senator Grassley. I am willing to go to a Senate roundtable. I am willing to do whatever it takes to defend Cherokee Nation and its businesses. These are baseless claims. We fanned a fire, unfortunately, with what you mentioned there on this, and it doesn't make it any more accurate, right? In terms of what happened. And so we're willing to go to whatever. We have many ideas and plans, and I know that all of us are willing to do whatever it takes to go to that next level. to defend ourselves. But first and foremost, we have to continue to tell the truth. We, in this business, inside of this humanitarian practice, we continue to be one of the leaders in this field. And so we continue to do it well. Our customers love what we do for them, and we want to continue to make that star worthy and continue to execute on those things. And so we'll go to whatever level the team decides to do from a communication counter strategy as it relates to the falsehoods and misinformation, disinformation, allegations, whatever you want to call them. We'll go to whatever level the team decides.
Right, and I absolutely appreciate that. And I think another reason why I take these allegations, I would almost say personally, is because Cherokee Nation has a history of being caretakers. Whether we're talking about having a public education system that predated the state of Oklahoma, that we actually allowed our non-Cherokee neighbors to actually take part in that public school system. Whether we're talking about incidents of, offering the the COVID vaccine to non-Indians in our community because we wanted people to be safe and protected. So these allegations of human trafficking really are just foul and vile. So did Cherokee Federal follow the Office of Refugee Resettlement regulations in performing its duties?
In every regard, in every single regard. Tim and this team diligently walked through, and you can see some of the detail here, and we can go pages and stack pages this tall of what that policy is and the protocol that we had to follow on each and every single case. And remember how nuanced each of these cases are. Things that you and I cannot even fathom these children were going through, and things that we had to deal with and prove out and understand and make sure ultimately they were in the safest place possible. In every regard did we follow the policy. In many cases, and one of the things that I failed to mention in terms of the people that came to the site is a thing called the Flores settlement, and it's kind of the foundation case for how these kids would be treated on the site. We had the judge that decided in that case come to our facility with her assistance, if you will, and she reviewed the facility, gave us glowing praise on the facility, and then also had follow-up meetings with our team on certain things and technologies and data analytics that we had implemented that they thought were so compelling, they wanted to figure out how to do it at every other site. And so, yes, we followed every regulation, and where we could, and the kiosk that you see is just one small representation of that, where we could, we brought additional things to the table to counter trafficking, to counter abuse, to make it faster for us to understand issues these kids were having on our site and about their potential sponsor faster than any other site in the network. And so, yes, we followed every single policy to the letter.
And who oversaw that compliance for Cherokee Federal?
So there were multiple government bodies that, as I mentioned, OIG, the HHS and ORR had their oversight on site. You have to remember, on this facility, we worked hand in hand with those HHS workers. Again, they were the ones making those decisions. And so we had our own internal compliance team. We had the government HHS compliance team. Then you had Inspector General's office that was also in there reviewing what we were doing. We had local and county officials. Tim, am I missing any other major body that was watching what we were doing every single day and making sure that we were checking those boxes? The OIG would come in and say, hey, are you doing the background checks? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And spot check many different areas to make sure we were following the policy and in compliance with that policy.
Absolutely. And so it's, you mentioned some counter strategies to try to counteract some of the misinformation and disinformation that's being put out there. And I really hate to see a good faith actor like Cherokee Nation, who, we're trying to do what's right. We're trying to act with good morals, good ethics, to be kind of people seeking to grind us up in the gears of federal politics. Because we've been very balanced, we've been very nonpartisan, and we've always been bipartisan in our political engagement. We work on both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely.
So seeing someone try to grind us up in the gears of federal politics is very concerning for me.
Agreed. Very,
Thank you.
very frustrating. Thank you. For
Speaker.
many of us, it's a hallmark of our career. This work, what we did for our Afghan allies on the global stage, the two largest humanitarian crises that had taken place, Cherokee was at the center of taking care of those folks, and we wear that proudly. It's the hallmark of our careers. Sorry, sir.
Are you
Go ahead.
good? All right, Speaker.
Well, this is somewhat distressing. This did come up a couple of years ago, and I believe a conspiracy website, Veritas, had published some things that Councilman No Fire did purport as the truth, and back then, as in now, there was no finding of fact at all that these were true. But I guess, looking at this round table, did members of Congress or other entities with oversight responsibility have access to the Pomona facility?
Everyone had access. Any elected official, we would welcome in, we would give them a tour at any point in time they wanted to see that. And you see a lot of those faces in the presentation that came. There were roughly 100 that came. Yes, we had open arms. We wanted our site to be transparent and be the model. And to do that, we welcomed everyone in to see exactly what we were doing and how we were doing it.
Back when these allegations first surfaced, that was a difficult thing to listen to. You can read anything on the internet and without substantiating, what you read. But, that same gentleman sat over there and made tons of accusations against the Cherokee Nation as far as saying that we would not treat COVID-19 patients who were not vaccinated and they were dying, and we were turning them away, and it was on the Cherokee Nation's hands, on Chief's hands. We sit there and listen to all these things on the internet, which were all false, which were all lies, and here we go again. I don't know how this has popped back up, but it has. So, when we talk about all these accusations that have no merit whatsoever, no evidence, it can damage our reputation. Is there any legal action that can be taken by you or others to combat this?
Yeah, we are exploring all of those options. Absolutely. I'll let Attorney General speak.
And Mr. Speaker, thank you for that question. Of course, these are very serious and I think very frivolous allegations that have been stated publicly about the Cherokee Nation and its entities. Of course, we're going to continue to look and analyze what those options could be. It's going to depend a little bit on getting more information and also seeing how this conversation and this discourse unfolds surrounding this topic. So it's certainly something that my office is going to look into, and certainly in collaboration with legal counterparts at Cherokee Federal and Cherokee Nation businesses. Thank you.
Okay. Johnny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Billy, thanks for coming in today and giving us this update. We went through this back in December of 2022, actually, looking back through my emails. I got just a couple of quick questions for you and then a comment. If you don't mind, without giving out too much information, well, I might get specific, but as far as our government contract awards for Cherokee Federal, how are we doing this year as compared to last year?
You're gonna let me brag.
Yeah, I am.
All right, I'm
I want
excited
you to
about
say it
that.
because I'm going to make a point about it. If you'll give us that information really quick.
Yeah, absolutely. As of today, I think we won $47 million today in contracts, so we're slightly over $1.3 billion in contract wins for this year.
That's right. That's right. Congratulations. We all appreciate that. Now, if I can dovetail that into one other question. If DHHS thought that Cherokee Federal had not done the right thing and was a bad actor in any way, do you think they would have the federal government awarded us 1.5 million in government contracts over the past year?
No, sir. And on that very Pomona contract, we received an exceptional CPARS rating by the federal government. So, no, I do not believe if we were bad actors in any way, shape, or form, that what we're doing, the success we're having, would exist with both of those things being true.
That's right. I feel the same way. Mr. Speaker brought up a good point of why this has to come up again, and sadly, Cherokee Federal will be kicked around as a political football over the course of the next 4 months. More stuff will be thrown around. The truth will prevail at the end of the day. We've gone through this before, and I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done. People don't realize, working with the Coast Guard for 20 years, we did a lot of humanitarian effort stuff. And these places are audited and inspected, if not weekly, on a daily basis. People need to understand that, and it's important to get that information out there. If not weekly, daily, inspections and audits with a number of people that are going through there. If the DHHS thought that Cherokee Federal was doing something wrong, Cherokee Federal would have been cut off from all government contract at that point forward. The reason why they are not is because this is baseless, and the reason why it's baseless and there's accusations is because of the year that we are in, federal politics wise. And I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Joe?
Mr. Bilby, thanks. I know we had a discussion before about this back in the day and then today. Being a contractor and a federal contractor like yourself, even today, when I was doing work even for C&E back 20 years ago, I always look at this interesting because you vetted us hard as a contractor. You'd have 9 people in there. We'd have to have our safety guys. We'd have to have HR in there. And that didn't mean we got the job. So I can imagine the vetting process, even when you're talking like 1.2 billion. It gets up there pretty quick. But I want to say, you guys have been proven over and over. And I'm going to relate it to sports. We could say the Chiefs. We have Russellville. We get attacked from them. We're winning. We're winning Cherokee federal contracts. We're winning at Cherokee Nation with services, health, everything we do, human services. And people look at us leading the way. But we're always going to have those people that are trying to figure out why we keep winning. And it's always less than 0.1%. So I know with your legal team going forward, and the way they are now is a winning team. If there's a way to take care of this and show again, which we will show again, legally, not on social media, that we have did everything correct. Because I know as a government guy, and you know as a government contract guy, you make one mistake, you're either put on probation or you're cut off and can never bid. That's a simple process. And if I remember right, when we started this, there was one contract at the beginning, and then we got phase 2. Is that right?
There was a
2-part contract.
There's kind of other contracts that spun off of this.
And we would have never
Yes.
got that contract, as Councilor Kidwell stated.
Yeah.
So I look at this as our team is built around a winning team as Cherokee Nation, whether it's C&E, C&I, Cherokee Federal. We can go down the list. Our government relations teams, our council work together great. We're doing great things in Cherokee Nation, and this is just another way for somebody to just shout remarks. So all I'm going to say is continue doing what you're doing, leave it to you legally, and I know you guys are going to continue great work, and I just want to say thank you, and we'll be behind you all the way. I appreciate it.
Thank you for that support. Thank you.
Kevin?
Yeah, Mr. Bilby, one thing I'd like to say, I'd like to commend you on, you had said that you would go to a round table or go to Senator Grassley and talk about this. I would add to that and say it ought to be an official proceeding that's under oath, because we're all public officials here. We know anybody can say what they want about us, and we understand the importance of free speech. I understand that importance. But whenever you start committing what is per se defamation on private individuals, you ought to be held responsible for it. And not only civilly responsible, but let's see if they're willing to show up in an official proceeding and advise them about criminal perjury. And then see if they're still willing to show up and talk about private individuals that way. It's heinous, the allegations. But The question I do have for you is, you had mentioned that there was kind of multiple checks and balances. You talked about kiosks, inspectors, county, state. Out of all those different checks and balances, was there ever any negative findings against Cherokee Federal?
Zero.
So to me, that sounds like people who have a motivation to lie. So do we know what that motivation would be?
I would hate to speculate, sir. I'm not a politician, especially at the national level. And I would hate to speculate. Immigration is a top subject. Immigration, inflation, and age of the existing president seems to be the three top issues. And I think the goal is that from an administration perspective, that there's some ineptness, and they're trying to prove that. And I think we have gotten pulled into this because ineptness isn't just enough. So they're also trying to say that it's corrupt and there's a bunch of people in line enabling all of this, and we just happen to be the path. Unfortunately, there's zero truth to it, and that will absolutely be told and continue to be told.
Yeah, well, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions? All right, I guess in summary, though, I can fully speak for this council that we have full confidence in Mr. Garrett, Mr. Bilby, and your ability to have the heart and mind for the number one stakeholders, and that's our people. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you for that. I want to add to that.
Go.
Please have confidence in the Tim Roberts and the Dina Geibes and the 5,286 other employees. They go out and they do mighty work every single day on behalf of our government, our federal government, on behalf of our nation, and they do it fantastically. And I'm so proud of them, and I would be remiss if I did not say that. Thank you for your confidence in me. Also have confidence in them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all so much.
All right, we're going to, just for timing, we're going to go kind of skip over the report. So if you have any questions for the rest of the reports, just shoot them my way and we'll get with them. So if you have any concerns there. So we'll go ahead and jump over to consent items. If you have anything there, let Jody know. Jody, got anything? All right. Everything looks good there. We'll jump over to old business, none pending, new business. Sasha, could you take that first one?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before that, in the interest of time, could I make a motion, please, that we consider items number 1 through 7 in toto? And that way we would take just one vote, since there's going to be acclamation, we presume, on
Yes.
all of them, and that will save us some additional time.
All right, got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, any opposition? All right. All right, do we need a motion and a second for those? Okay. So those are all approved, correct?
No.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, I'll take a motion.
In toto.
Yeah, and, yeah, motion, Joe?
I'll second.
Motion and a second by Darrell. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, 1 through 7 passes. All right, let's see, Kevin, can you take number 8?
Yes, sir. This is an act amending legislative act number 21-23, authorizing the comprehensive capital budget for fiscal year 2024, Mod 5, and declaring an emergency. Put this form in motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, motion passes. Councilman Poindexter, can you take that 9th one?
Yes, this is an act amending legislative act number 22-23, authorizing the comprehensive operating budget for the fiscal year 2024-Mod 10 and declaring an emergency, and I put that in the form of a motion.
All right, I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, motion passes, and items 1 through 9 need to go to full council tonight. All right, do we have any announcements? All
Just
right.
real
All
quick,
right, Speaker?
appreciate your explanation of what's going on. I think it was very thorough, and I think it's very admirable that we are in a position to give humanitarian aid whenever we can. So I know you have all our respect, and we have the utmost belief in what you do, and we do believe in what you do. Mr. Garrett, you want to say anything?
Just briefly, I want to thank each of you for your allowing us to be here, to tell the truth, to get that out there, and your continued support really means the world to us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. All right, the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, August 29th at 3 PM. I need another motion. Got a motion? Got a motion second. We're adjourned.